Elizabeth Orgi. Miss Elizabeth Orgi is a registered dental therapist who is a co-owner of Family Dental Clinic. She also works part-time at the Primary Healthcare Center, Urosembe, and carries out health research research and outreach at the Mambila Plateau with the American missionaries at Gechan. Elizabeth Orji will be speaking to us this morning on the use of nanotechnology in dentistry. Wow. Have you heard that before? It's going to be an interesting topic. So stay tuned. Please do not log off. Make sure you see to the end of this presentation. Okay. While we invite our presenter, Miss Elizabeth Orji, to the podium, while I share her screen.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Charity, for this warm welcome. I'm grateful. This morning, I would want to talk about the use of nanotechnology in dentistry. I know we've heard about nanotechnology. This is not the first time. So I'll go down to the introduction of nanotechnology. Before I would say anything about the introduction, I would talk about a very popular saying where we've heard, I know some of us have heard about it. I think it's said, as above, so below, as without, so within. This was actually coined from Solomon, the King Solomon, that was believed to be the wisest person who lived back then. So over the years, the use of that principle have changed so many ways we view things in the past and has evolved so many things. But some scientists went back to look at that principle and said, I guess we didn't interpret what he said very well. You know, these things we are written in very ancient languages, and sometimes there can be mixed up in interpretations. So they were like, okay, I think we are wrong in the way we actually interpreted this particular by King Solomon. So they looked into it second time and they found out that what he meant was as within, so without, meaning it's from the inside we actually express what is outside, or we view what is outside, or react to what is outside, and not as above, so below. You know, we spend so much in going into space and trying to look at space and trying to get solutions from things we've seen in space to actually see how we can help humanity. But they said, no, it is not really as above, so below, but as below, so above. And it's more like look inwards, like look down to the minute things we have around us. And let's see how we could change a whole lot of problems we are experiencing as humans by these little things that are below us, that are beneath us. So it actually created a shift in the way inventions and creativity and innovations started to take a place. So with that, they started to see if they can break things down to the smallest minimum and see if it can actually help in the way we treat sicknesses and with the way we invent things. And that gave rise to what? Nanotechnology. And it's actually a Greek word. That word nano actually means dwarf. So, but as they tried to invent so many things and they tried to look into it, in 1959, a Nobel Prize scientist called Richard Feynman actually introduced that idea, nanotechnology. Now, we know about nano as being tiny, but that word nanotechnology was actually introduced in the year 1959 to sum up all what they've been doing. And Nanotechnology is actually a technology where tiny particles below 100 nanometers is used to do what? To create a wide range of things, or to explain or to invent a wide range of things. So anything below 100 nm, which is nanometer, that is being used would be classified under what? Nanotechnology. And in science, down to dentistry, we have been able to use that in dental therapy, in the way we developed our materials, and in the way we diagnose a whole lot of what? A whole lot of ailments and treat them. So we'll go over to the next slide, where we are going to talk about some of the places nanotechnology has been applied and the ongoing research that has been done, the ongoing evolution in nanotechnology in dentistry. And one of the one I want to talk about is the way nanotechnology is revolutionizing anesthesia, our local anesthesia that we use in the dental clinic. Now, we call this not local anesthesia, but dental local nano anesthesia. So, what is this local dental anesthesia? It's actually our anesthesia that we know, but broken down into nano what? Into nanometers. And because of they are very tiny, it's difficult for you and I to see, it's difficult for you and I to manipulate physically. We can be able to introduce what we call nanorobots. These nanorobots are very small, and they are the one that will carry what? The local nano anesthesia down to the part of the patient's mouth that need to be numbed. And for you and I to be able to allow this robot to do that, we have to get what we call a nano computer. This nano computer will be manipulated by the professional, by the dentist. While he is controlling this nano computer, the robots are moving in the patient's mouth. Now, this patient would not even know they are there. You just tell your patient, lie down. The patient will lie down on the dental chair. Open your mouth, you open your mouth. You place whatever you need to place in the patient's mouth. The patient wouldn't even be known. It wouldn't even know there is something in his or her mouth. And these robots go down to where the pain is emanating from and numb it. The patient would not even feel anything. But what the patients will tell you is that actually I can't feel the pain anymore. Then you know actually it has actually worked. Or from your screen, the nano screen, you will see the activities being carried out by these nano robots, and then you can ascertain very well that yes, there is no more sensation on that particular area of the patient's mouth. So the essence of the dental local nano anesthesia is one, numbing that pain for the patient effectively, and secondly, without the patient feeling any pain during the entire process, and thirdly, localizing the numbness, not actually having to numb the entire this is the regional numbing we do for an entire area of the patient's mouth. No, but local, actually streamlining the numbing to that particular tooth. If it's a tooth you are trying to extract, maybe if you are trying to do S&P and the patient is in pain, it goes a very long way in making sure that the patient feels no pain and is done precisely. So over to the next slide. I am going to talk about repositioning of the teeth. Now, what is repositioning of the teeth? It's basically what we do in orthodontics. In orthodontics, they specialize a whole lot in putting the tooth back in its correct arrangement, and maybe when there is an accident and the jaw has shifted so much, it's being returned back. Now, imagine having robots, although they are very, very tiny. Each of these are less than 100 nanometers, has its complete properties within them. So combining a whole lot of them makes them very, very strong. Because they are very, very strong, and you place these nanorobots in, let's say, for example, a patient had an accident and broke his or her jaw, and you as a dentist controlling your computer place these nanorobots in the patient's mouth. giving the nanorobots correct, precise arrangement of how you want the jaw to look like when the robots are done. These robots start working in replacing or repositioning the tooth or the jaw back, and the patient would not feel any pain. They are very, very tiny, but they are very, very strong and effective. So they realign the patient's mouth, push back alveolar bones in a painless manner, and this is what the repositioning of teeth using nanorobot is expected to achieve. So over to the next point is my nano robotic toothpaste, in which we call them what? The Dentistry robots. Now imagine having tiny robots in your toothpaste. That sounds very awesome to me. And these toothpastes are not just meant to give you a fresh breath as we do every morning and evenings when we brush, or probably most, despite we brush, they are not really very effective in preventing and in protecting our teeth. And I think it actually has to boil down with our brushing technique and other stuff we've dealt with over the years. But taking it a step further, these little robots, these nanorobots that are embedded in your toothpaste would go as far as removing calculus from the teeth. It is not just brushing, and after brushing of the teeth, you still have to go to see your dentist to go for calculus removal every 6 months. No. Over time, they will achieve that comfortably, but the goal of the nanorobotic toothpaste is you don't just brush out tartar as we usually brush out from our mouth. We are going to go a step further to removing calculus, and that's the job of this nanorobotic toothpaste. So, and also, when you have toxic materials in your mouth, let's say, for example, you're someone who eats a whole lot of junks, or the kind of job you do permits you to inhale toxic substances, permits you to put toxic substances in your mouth, and you can see them hiding and embedded in your mouth. These little nanorobots will also do what? Convert these toxic substances in your mouth to harmless ones. And that's another thing they can do when they are found not just in your toothpaste, but also in your mouthwashes. So over to the next slide. I want to talk about how nanotechnology is evolutionizing oral cancer. And we're going to talk about the findings of what nanotechnology can do in terms of finding cancer, locating cancer in a patient's mouth. So I titled these findings regarding oral cancer. And one is the use of what? Nanoscale cantilevers. So these nanoscale cantilevers are very elastic, but they're all possessing nano properties. And what they do is that they go and bond with what? The chemical that is associating with cancer. So we believe that cancers are formed through chemical reactions. And when they are embedded in your mouth, what they do is that they do what? They bond with these chemical substances to help what? Identify which of the substances are cancerous to you, to your health. That is one thing that they do. Secondly, is the use of what we call the nanopores. So what are nanopores? These are very, very tiny openings existing in your nanotechnology use or robots that you are going to attach. What they do is they allow your DNA strand to pass through them. And what do? They do what we call DNA sequencing. And what does this DNA sequencing does? The DNA sequencing help in identifying what? Cancer cells. Another thing the nanopores also do, they use what we call carbon rods also to also locate what the afflicted DNA, your genes that are what susceptible to cancer, or where cancers has actually started taking place in your mouth. And the fourth one is called the quantum dots. Now, what is this quantum dot? These quantum dots, when embedded in your mouth, and so your mouth is being subjected to what? Ultraviolet light. So they do what? These quantum dots release a certain kind of protein when in contact with ultraviolet light, and they do what? They start showing places where cancer cells is located. And that is another place or another way we can use that nanotechnology. And when we've identified these cancerous cells, we move over to the next slide where we talk about treatment of what? treatment of oral cancer. Now, if you want to treat oral cancer, one way to do that is using a what? A nanoshell. Now, what are these nanoshells? They are very, very tiny. I spoke so much about how tiny or how minute technology is. So because they're very, very tiny, but although they are very, very tiny, they are very, very strong. They are being placed in a patient's mouth, and what they do, they start absorbing different chemicals, different radiations that is being released. They start absorbing these cancerous cells, different parts of the mouth, even tumors. They go so far in doing that. They start absorbing these things through different technique that has been programmed to do. And when they absorb this, they do that very slowly, in such a way the patient don't have to go through so much pain as they go through when undergoing stuffs like chemotherapy and all that, because they're very small and they're painless. The patient can go through without so much pain, and they attack the specified cancerous cells, the nanoshells, and they eradicate them. Now, they don't destroy other healthy cells like we do. Sometimes when a patient is having cancer in his or her lower jaw, we tend to cut off the entire lower jaw. And when we do that, the patient is actually losing not just the cancerous part, but also the healthy part. But with the use of nanoshells, you just target the cancerous cells and deal with it, allowing the healthy part of the patient's mouth to remain. So another use of nanotechnology is in what? Hypersensitivity. So when a patient is experiencing what? Sensitivity in his mouth or over the board hypersensitivity, these dental nanorobots that we've been speaking about can be able to bind with organic materials that we use in dealing with hypersensitivity, but their binding makes it very, very effective. And what they do is they go and block the dentinal tubules. They block the dentinal tubules in such a way that they have regenerative properties that over time they fill up those spaces permanently. And when you look under the microscope, you realize that the binding is so effective that it can be very difficult, or over time it will be, for it to be removed will be almost impossible. And with this process, we can treat hypersensitivity in our patient. Over to the next slide, we are going to talk about nano solutions and nano adhesives. So when we talk about nano solutions, it's not offering solutions, but solution in terms of our liquid solution we use in the dental clinic. And when we talk about adhesives, we talk about bondings, being able to bond one part of something to the other part of something. And we are able to do this through the use of what? Nanotechnology. And these nano solutions and adhesives that we are talking about is, for example, you want to bond, let's say a patient comes into your clinic and want to attach a gold crown to his canine to look very beautiful or very handsome. So you need a bonding agent that is not just strong but lightweight, not just strong but lightweight, but will also have properties that will protect the patient's tooth surface. So this is what this thing offers. Now, when you use nano solutions or nano adhesive, it's not bulky. They are very, very light. It's like there is nothing there. They are very, very firm. Chewing and any other frictional activity you do with your mouth will be unable to remove them. We can also use them to bond crowns in patients' mouth. And they are very, 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 very strong. And you won't even experience any form of removal in the shortest period of time. They can stay there for donkey years, and they're very, very effective. We want to also talk about the use of impression materials and using the impression materials using nanotechnology. And we are going to begin this with what we call the nanofillers. So these nanofillers is used to do what? It's been embedded into the impression materials, and when you embed nanofillers into impression materials, they make the impression materials very, very effective. So when you take impression for your patient, even maybe you made a mistake, you actually tilt the tray a little bit and all that, you still realize that you get an effective copy of the patient's mouth. So they just go straight and hug that tooth, and the first time they get there, they hug it. That's the first impression you get. Even the table moves, they move with the tray. They are not that firm as we know our normal impression materials, but they move with the tray and they give you effective copy of the patient's mouth. So we also like to look at nanoscale hydroxyapatite molecules, and these molecules also don't just help in taking impression, they also have the properties to repair damaged areas in the patient's mouth. So if you are taking impression of the patient's mouth to see if there are places that are damaged, you are using the right material when using this material. Over to the next slide, we want to talk about dentition renaturalization. Now, this is down to cosmetic dentistry. So, cosmetic dentistry is something that we would love to talk about, and we'll know we have to actually look for solutions that are better than what we have today, that are also harmless. So, cosmetic dentistry has been revolutionized using nanotechnology. One is the use of when you try to whiten a patient's teeth, the patient risks the ability of losing enamel due to the breakdown of the enamel by those harsh substances. But with the nanotechnology, you don't just break it down or break down those you don't have to break down the enamel, but it has constituents in it that would actually repair the enamel. And also, it's so effective to this point that over time, we are expecting nanotechnology to do what? We're expecting nanotechnology to develop the ability to replace lost parts of your tooth. Let's say you have a chipped enamel and all that. You can be able to see your enamel growing. You can be able to see your enamel growing back and filling that up. Also, there is also vaccines that are being developed to treat dental caries, which is also a way of renaturalization of your tooth. Dental caries. So what does those vaccines, although they are still undergoing trial, what those vaccines will do over time is to be able to prevent those bacteria in your mouth to reproduce that would actually harm your teeth. They're just there for sitting sake. They cannot be able to do what? They cannot be able to reproduce. They cannot be able to harm your teeth. They will be there, but they will be very, very inactive. So we want to talk about dentition replacement. Okay, now we'll talk about dentures and all that in this topic. So what nanotechnology can do in terms of the use of denture is what we are talking about. What can they do? Now, we know that our denture over time would wear off. But the use of nanotechnology in the construction of dentures would make sure that the dentures would not wear off in time, would not even wear off. In fact, nanotechnology is such a way that they are very strong but very fluid. It's shocking, right? Because as the tooth is going through movements, it's expected that without you seeing it, they have properties that would move. So when this part of the tooth is being chipped off, they rearrange their structures themselves and fill up that space. When this part of the tooth is heavily being attacked, they can actually reposition themselves and replace them with other parts of the nano fillers or technology or robots that is really being used. They will move themselves. Someone would say that it's sort of they have like life. I would say no, they're just built to be very, very sensitive. So when you go through dentition replacement, like let's say over time we would want to build we are going to see an entire tooth being replaced in sort of an in vitro way, the way we have in vitro fertilization. We are going to do sort of in vitro fertilization to a tooth, and we see that tooth start growing and occupying that space, and it's going to be as effective as the natural tooth that we already have in the mouth. So we want to go over to dentary fissures, which is also, we are still going to talk about the nanoscale hydroxyapatite molecules. So these molecules will be built in such a way that when you place them in the teeth, when you are cleaning your teeth, maybe after eating, Sometimes after eating, you use toothpick to remove one particular meat and it's refusing to go out. Maybe in the morning, that place is swollen. Sometimes patients will come to you and say, I have something stuck in my tooth over the night. I'm unable to sleep. I'm uncomfortable. Now, with this dentifrices containing this nanoscale hydroxyapatite, they don't just serve as toothpick and remove. No, they break down food particles. So when you just tell them, okay, use this stuff on your teeth, you realize that they get to that place and they break down that thing that is there, that particle that is there. When they break it down into very small size, you can be able to flow out like liquid out of the mouth. And they also do that repair surfaces. So we expected that the patient might have inflammation after the particle is removed. They also would actually do what? Offer some repairs to that place. So denture teeth made of nanomaterial. Okay, I've talked about that, why I was highlighting the other point. So I think I will skip that. I'll also go down to nano composites. So offering composite fillings for our patients over the years has been a very difficult thing, because we see patients coming back to the dental clinic and saying, oh, it has chipped, oh, it's that. So we are talking about composites made of nanomaterials that are firm but fluid, firm but dynamic. So we've spoken so much about nanofillers that are firm but dynamic. So what they just do is that they hold on to the tooth surface very effective, and they also contain, okay, we've seen some materials that are very, very effective, or that are stronger than the tooth surface, than the enamel that we have, but we've not really found a way to make them worthy of being used as composites for the patient's mouth. But when you now use nanotechnology on these substances, you can be able to use these substances on the tooth surfaces. Since they are stronger than the enamel, they'll actually protect the enamel effectively. And since they can protect the enamel effectively, we'll have less wear and tear over time. And we'll have, I think over the years, with the use of nanotechnology, we'll really have patients with caries. So over to the next slide, we are going to talk about challenges faced by nanotechnology. And one of the challenge that is being faced currently by nanotechnology is precise placement of nanoscale components. Now, since research is still ongoing and so many things is still trying to be put in place, so since they are these things are very, very tiny, tinier than your eye can see. So being able to get the correct way to place these things is still posing as a challenge presently, and also being able to produce them in large scale is also a challenge presently that is being tackled with. Secondly, mass production technique for nanorobots that are affordable. So there are nanorobots currently present, but being able to produce for the large mass and at an affordable rate is also a challenge that is being faced in the nanotechnology world, and we are getting there gradually. Another one is concerns with biocompatibility. Over time, they've seen what we call the nanotoxicity being existent when they try a lot of these nanotechnology random trials on animals. So being able to find the right balance between life and nanotechnology is still ongoing. And I know with time we are going to find that balance. Tactical and financial consideration. So this point is just talking about being able to know, okay, how much will I charge my patient when I'm going to offer this? Know what is going to be done in terms of choosing this option over another option. Which will I choose and all that? So those are also challenges being faced. Then poor integration of clinical research. There are actually very less professionals who are interested in nanotechnology currently. So making its integration very, very slow in the terms of practice or use in the professional world. Finally, in terms of challenges, public acceptance. Just imagine a patient coming into your clinic and you say, good morning, sit down. I'm going to introduce some little robot into your mouth that will help with your problem. Not everybody would want to accept that. So it's a process, and we need a whole lot of sensitization to get there. Then ethics. Now, when we finally introduce nanotechnology into the everyday professional life, what are the ethics that will bind the use of that? Because we know abuse is imminent. It's something that we also have to deal with. So regulations to what are we going to regulate? How many procedures can a patient undergo using the nanotechnology, and all that is going to also be something we have to look into. Then human safety is also another thing that we have to look into, and social issues too. So over to my next slide, we are going to talk about the future of nanotechnology. Now, a lot of nanotechnology has been created. A lot of these things I spoke about are existing. But that word nanocomputer I spoke about, which would, are we there?
Yes.
Good. Now, the nanocomputer, which is the bedrock or which is the backbone of for operating a lot of these nanorobots, is yet to be developed. Or would I say is in the process by some geniuses out there, but none has come out and say he or she is successful with it. So currently there is a what we call a Feynman prize out there of a whooping 250,000 US dollars out there for anybody that will develop a nanocomputer that can effectively manipulate a nanorobot or group of nanorobots. And this money is out there for anybody. You or I can take it. Anybody can win this award if we can do that. So it's something that needs to be developed, and I hope between now and the next 10 years, you or I or both of us, all of us together, can come up with a solution to build a nanocomputer, and can only be done simply by you and I going down to know what is nanotechnology, how can this work, what is the ins and out of nanotechnology. Understanding it can also help. So in conclusion, I would say these things are very, very tiny. Although they are very, very tiny, we should not be discouraged and say, oh, they're very, very tiny, they're difficult to work with. But no, these things can change the way we see things, from repairing of the tooth back to its normal state, from you being able to carry on with a whole lot of procedures effectively without so much damage, and the ability to actually have stronger teeth, stronger would I say, okay, stronger teeth. You move around, you can crack your bones, you can live your life, you can live 80 years still having 32 set of teeth remaining, 32 teeth remaining in your mouth. So these are things that needs to be these advantages is enough for one to say, well, we really have to look into this technology. I know because of their very, very minute, they're very, very tiny, it's easily can be abused. It really can be manipulated and can be misused. That's why we need it in the right hands by the right people. And we know with time, new advancement, and with the way technology is moving now, it's going to be in our hands. And I think it's up to you and I to do that. So that will be the end of my presentation. And I'll say thank you for listening.